Would you kindly? The hidden levels.
Hold on. How do I get my Mewtwo DLC download code?
You don't. You can't. You don't have a 3DS, Austin. Womp womp womp.
Nintendo can suck it. Screw Nintendo.
Yeah.
Now, what you can do is find someone with a 3DS who does not have a Wii U and be like, "Hey, listen, man."
Or you can go to GameStop. I think this is less of a jerk move now because Club Nintendo is closing, but you can take pictures of the codes if they left them in the cases.
Ooh, I didn't think about that.
Some people do that. It's kind of a jerk move, but I guess Club Nintendo's about to close anyway, so it's unlikely that a person who bought it would register it.
Well, so if that happens, can I get Mewtwo at a later date, maybe?
I'm sure they're gonna sell them or something like that.
They're
later.
gonna sell them as DLC.
Yeah, and
I'll buy him. He's awesome.
he's probably gonna be like the way Nintendo's been pricing DLC lately. He's probably gonna be like $2 or something like that.
I bet you. Yep.
Something cheap.
I think that's likely, especially because they're giving them away for free to so many people.
Right.
I don't think they're gonna charge a lot for him.
Yeah, I really hope we get DLC with Smash Brothers. I don't know. We'll see though.
I don't know what to expect. Nintendo makes such bizarre decisions.
It's
if
true.
it were any other publisher, I'd say obviously they're gonna make DLC.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is a huge game. They've sold millions of units. It makes sense to make DLC. But
I think if Mario Kart is any indication, they're going to have DLC. It's going to be priced well,
yeah.
and it's going to be pretty solid. I hope that's the case. Mario Kart's
I hope
DLC
so.
is a good price, and it's pretty decent for what you get. And
Dude,
Sure.
for what you're paying on Mario Kart, for what you're paying on Mario Kart is not even for 2 DLC packs is not equitable to 1 Call of Duty pack.
Yeah.
You're getting 8 maps and 3 characters per pack. Like that's easily Call of Duty would be charging $15 per pack on that,
Yeah.
and they're getting $12 for both.
I'll tell you, those multiplayer shooters really make bank on that DLC.
Oh, they do.
Because
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot because strategically there's a lot that goes into designing a map for a game like Call of Duty. I'll give them credit for that. But in the end, all they do is have to do a 3D render of this one small sized map area. And that's it. That's all they have to do. It's not a ton, and then they sell it for crazy prices.
Well, and
it's true.
the part
That's
is
how they get around not charging monthly subscriptions.
yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Servers and constant support for balancing and all that stuff.
Yeah, sure.
This is a great segue into our topic this week on the Hidden Levels, where we talk about what I call the gaming Groundhog Day effect, meaning annualized franchises. We see the same thing every year, and once we finish that game, guess what? It starts all over again the next year with a different coat of paint. And so we're going to talk about annualized franchises. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they hurting the industry? Stay tuned and take a look as Tyler Austin and I take a look at annualized game franchises. This is the Hidden Levels. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and I'm joined to the west.
Austin Lucari.
And I am joined by my other co-host in the east.
Tyler Johnson.
And as I said, we're going to talk about Call of Duty, probably. Yeah, it's probably going to be Call of Duty. But anyway, before then, though, there's been a lot going on in the game industry the last couple weeks. We're going to talk about some news and some of the games we've been playing. But before we go in there, a question I have for Tyler starting out this week is, if you had to pick a favorite game developer studio, so Valve, Blizzard, any of those, studios, who would you pick and why?
This is actually a really, really difficult question for me. I'm not entirely sure. I'd say Nintendo, but Nintendo isn't really fair because I think that incorporates a lot of different development teams. So I think I'm going to go with Media Molecule, particularly because they seem to do really creative, unique content with games like Little Big Planet and Tearaway, and I'm just really excited to see what they're going to do next because it's always going to be something different. It's always going to be something immensely creative, top-notch, high quality. So I think right now they're my favorite developer.
They're definitely pulling a little bit of Disney magic for Sony, right? I think they're bringing that childlike magic and imagination that we haven't seen from Sony since the PlayStation 1 days, really. Except for on the PlayStation 3, it was, I don't know, they felt very unique and one of a kind, unlike, the Uncharted's and the Metal Gear Solids, which of course had a little more edge to them. But this one was a lot more fun. It wasn't quite Nintendo, but it had that that sense of imagination that I think a lot of Sony's other studios lack.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And I can't wait. I think at E3 they're going to announce something that Media Molecule is working on. In addition to, of course, the Tearaway for PlayStation 4, they're working on some other huge project. And I'm just so excited to see what they're doing, because I know it's going to be great.
Oh, yeah. Whatever because they've actually been pretty bums the word the last couple of years.
They have. They've
so
been quiet.
They're sitting on something. They're sitting on something pretty big. So, Austin, how about you? What is one of your favorite studios?
This is a hard question because it depends. These studios, people come and go in the studios, and so kind of the quality of games and the type of things they do change over the years. But that being said, I think for their entire body of work, I'm going to have to go with BioWare. They got purchased by EA, and they haven't quite been the same since, but Dragon Age Inquisition was really, really good. And then all their previous games before EA came around were fantastic. So I'm going to have to go with BioWare.
Can't forget Knights of the Old Republic, man. One of the best story games out there ever. And then, of course, Mass Effect. I don't care what you say about the ending, people. That trilogy is one of the best stories we've seen in video games ever. And so, yeah. BioWare's actually, they're definitely pushing the bar on what it means to tell a great story in gaming. And the gameplay is always solid as well. I had a really tough time with this one, because I'm with Tyler. Inherently, I want to say Nintendo, but honestly, Nintendo, there are probably about a dozen game development studios that get lumped under the Nintendo umbrella, so it's a little unfair. So I don't really want to give credit to them. Retro would probably be my favorite of the Nintendos with the Metroid Prime trilogy. But and then I think of Valve, and the only thing that is keeping me from saying Valve is that they don't put games out ever anymore. They take like 8 years to put anything out. But I look back at everything going all the way back to Half-Life 1 was a spectacular first-person shooter, and then really my interest in PC gaming was revitalized with the Orange Box, because I hadn't played a PC game at that point in probably 5 or 6 years, and I picked up the Orange Box because I was like, 5 games for one, that's cool, and I never got to finish Half-Life 2. I don't think I finished Half-Life 2, and then of course you got the expansion packs, and then there was this little game in there called Portal. I didn't really know what to expect with it.
I wouldn't bother with that thing. My guess is that touching it will just make your life even worse somehow.
Valve's a great studio. I have to go with, though, is Bethesda. And the reason I go with Bethesda is because whenever a new Elder Scrolls or Fallout comes out, which really I've only done one, and I think I've only really been on board with the last 2 Oblivions, but those are games I get lost in. The older I get, the harder I find it to get lost in a game where you just get sucked in and you lose all sense of time and reality and sorts. This is probably not a good thing, FYI. But when I'm playing Skyrim, I get so focused on all the goals at hand and just exploring and walking around and looking at all the intricacies of the world and finding all the little hidden secrets and then telling my own story, and I thought Skyrim really elevated that with some of their subplots, including the big side mission with the Civil War going on. There was lots, and I really did feel like I was playing out my own story, even though of course other people made those same decisions. I was so into it, I felt like I was living it. And Fallout's another game I probably put around. I don't do MMOs, guys, so for me, 300 or 400 hours into a game is a lot of time, and that's probably the only game I think I can ever say I put that much time into ever, and I loved every second of it. And it was one of those games with so many layers. You could not see everything in Fallout 3 that there was to see playing it once, or even twice, honestly. And that's a mark of a great game, and a studio that understands how to do world building and crafting an atmosphere that you totally get lost in. Okay, that was a really long rant.
Caleb, I was once like you. And I loved Bethesda. I wasn't going to go into the whole...
Okay, I thought you were going with that.
No, it could have, but I won't. I won't do it. I put probably about 100 hours into Skyrim, and then my game on PS3 started slowing down.
Yeah.
Like the frame rate got really shitty. And then I ran into a game-ending glitch that totally corrupted my save file and deleted everything I did. And I only had like a few more quests to do. I think there was like 6 or something. It was really, really small amount. And since then, I have hated Bethesda every day of my life.
Oh, I mean, they did rob you of over 100 hours of your life, so I guess I can't blame you.
It was so frustrating. Like, that's unforgivable to me. That's totally unforgivable.
Because that entire investment just literally went to the toilet. Like, you just lost it all.
Yeah.
Everything.
And they did. And not only that, the whole frame rate problem, that was going on for months.
Oh no, it
months.
took them over a year to get that fixed.
And in the meantime, I can't play the game. So I spend all this money on a game, and I can't even play it. Like, to me, that's not the mark of a truly great developer when they just leave you there like that. Just suck it. I don't care.
Dang it, Austin! You had to bring that up. I did not have that scenario happen, but I did. I totally forgot that was an issue because that was a huge issue for a lot of people. And if Bethesda was Valve, they would have had it fixed in like 2 days, but they aren't.
It's true.
So I guess.
And it's not like they don't have the resources. They have plenty of resources at Bethesda Studios. Like, they can do it.
Well, that's the sign of them rushing a port out the door, unfortunately, because that game is built for the 360.
Yeah, it's true.
And to be fair, the PlayStation 3, I mean, to some extent, be fair, PlayStation 3, not exactly the easiest game to code for, especially for a game. Especially for a game like that. Like, that's a very PC-style game.
Well, and I think a lot of the problem with the PS3 was the split memory.
Yeah.
That made it difficult with the Xbox 360. If they needed to increase the memory for a specific aspect of the game, they could just continue to use up, I think it was a gig that it had or something along those lines. Whereas the PlayStation 3, the memory was split into halves, and you could not, I think it was like 500 megs for graphics and then 500 megs for the operating system or something along those lines. And that made it more challenging to develop games like with massive worlds similar to Skyrim. And I think that was part of Bethesda's problem, that they couldn't really get it worked out on the PS3. But I'm with Austin that I love Bethesda, and I love Bethesda games, especially the Fallout series. And I put hundreds of hours into it. But the glitches, and I hope this is fixed on the next one, are just ridiculous. If any other game had come out that wasn't quite as exceptional as the Elder Scrolls and the Fallout games, it would be blasted for the number of game-breaking bugs and glitches and things like that.
Well,
I'm a bit of a trophy hunter, and you'll notice I don't have a platinum trophy for Skyrim, and there's a reason for that. Was because I encountered a game. It was the Daedric artifact ones where you had to get all 12 of them.
Yeah.
And one of them, I didn't even realize it was a bug until later, but a door had closed off to an area, and I just thought at the time that, I can't figure this out. I don't feel like going to look up right now how to do it. I'll just come back later. And so my save file got overwritten. My many save files got overwritten before I finally went back at the end of the game, and I was like, I guess I got to finish this last one. And I could not get it because the door was permanently shut that I needed to go through. I was so mad. And it's one of those quests that basically I'd have to put in like 20 hours.
Yeah, just get back up. Yeah.
Just to get that trophy. And it wasn't worth it to me, but it was very frustrating. And I had a little bit of the slowdown. It wasn't bad enough on the PlayStation 3 for me to quit playing it, but I did have slowdown, and throughout the whole game I was doing stuff like closing doors behind me and everything,
right? Because
I had heard that leaving doors open and things like that would add to the amount of memory required for the save file, and so I was closing doors behind me. It impacted my game, how I played the game.
Okay.
And so but I love Bethesda, don't get me wrong, I really do.
Well,
I hope their game engine on the PS4 and Xbox One and PC is better this time.
All right, well, guys, that's been fun. Maybe I'm probably totally wrong on the Bethesda front. There are a lot of game studios out there worth looking at, to be honest, and it's like picking children sometimes, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite? Yeah. Because then I would have said Irrational if they still existed. Moment of silence over. Okay, so, all right, let's go ahead and move on to this week's news. Austin, it's been an eventful couple weeks. What do you have for us today?
There is so much to talk about, but I had to pick one news topic. So I went with Eurogamer, very popular video game review site and kind of news site, has decided to end ratings for games. They're no longer going to use the 1 through 10 scale and all of that.
Controversy.
As a result, they're no longer going to be on Metacritic or any of those things.
Thank God.
They are switching to, at the end of a review, just having a little one-line summary. And some games will receive one of 3 badges. The first one being recommended. So it's a game that you should check out. It's a good game. It's pretty exciting. You should check it out. And another one, which is a higher level than that, is essential. So these are like the very, very best games. So this is one you have to play. Definitely have to play. And then the last one, and they're hoping to not have to use this one very much, is avoid. So these are games, maybe there's like huge flaws in them, or maybe the game is just like, it's not worth buying right now, it's totally broken, things like that.
Skyrim on PS3 maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, could be. Like, if that had the void tag on it, like wait a year until they actually fix some of their problems, I might have waited. But so it was interesting, and it got me thinking about, they're not. This isn't unique. This isn't the first website to do it. Kotaku, for example, they just kind of do yes or no on whether or not you should buy it. They don't really do scores. Other websites do 1 through 5 scale, all of that. But what it ends up feeding into when you start doing those scales is a kind of like pseudo precision, and you get people arguing about which game is better than another game, and it ends up being really asinine and stupid. But I did get the
journalism, or ethics and games journalism, Austin. Ethics and game journalism. I don't know what you're talking about here. My game is a 9.5. If you disagree, you're full of crap and you don't have any ethics in your games journalism.
Like games that I like, then you're obviously a corrupt person. So it got me thinking about ratings in other industries. So one of the things, and very similar to this, is kind of the Cisco and Ebert kind of thumbs up, thumbs down stuff. And that's pretty similar to what Eurogamer does. It's like, it's good, it's not good. That's pretty much it. That's all you're going to get out of them, which is pretty cool. And I think that works, and it forces you to read a little bit. And I think that works for me.
Whoa. Whoa, Austin, whoa. You're saying there's not like a number I can just go look at. I don't need to read the review. I can just go, and then making my entire argument for why this game is good based off of that number score that one particular person was forced to give it, because most writers in the industry do not like giving number scores, FYI. They're always complaining about it. So, continue. Sorry.
Well, the restaurant industry does something which I think is really cool and could be applied to video games. They have the Michelin star system. So basically, the only way you were ever considered to get a Michelin star is if you were a truly excellent, phenomenal restaurant with a giant track record of being amazing. And then you might get 1 star. There's only I think 50 3-star restaurants in the world, and so there's 1, 2, and 3. So it's kind of like what Eurogamer is doing, and if you consider the recommended be like a 1 star and the essential be like a 2 star, and not everybody gets one. It would be kind of cool to review every game, but if a game is truly exceptional, if it steps beyond kind of the mundane, every game does this kind of thing, then maybe it gets a star or something. I think that would be cool. It would avoid you having to get put on Metacritic, because Metacritic wouldn't know how to account for that.
Oh, no. Metacritic will find a way, Austin. It always does.
It'll find a way. Metacritic always finds a way.
No, it seriously
and then they
does.
Don't tell anyone how they define that.
No, like straight up. There have been times that you see, like there was, what was it? Back when 1UP was around, they gave a game a B-, and they counted it as a negative review. I was like, what? They gave like a 40, or it was something super low, and I was like, wait a second, this is not at whoa. I mean, it was weird. I don't get Metacritic.
And there are very few game sites now that use a kind of 1 to 10 scale that actually use it. I don't know, where a 5 is average, like it probably should be.
No. The way the game industry does it is it's more, and here's what we don't really talk about very often is, or the way I have always understood it is that they're still doing the A, B, C, D, E, F style. Like a 1 to 100, and almost every game gets at least a 60%. So it's at least a D, right? No, they don't say that. But how many games do we really see below a 5 ever? Right?
1UP used to do that. 1UP used to give them A, B, C, D, and that made sense.
Yeah,
that was fine.
I like that,
People
actually.
can translate that into, okay, C is average, If you're a D, you're sucking. If you're an F, you're really sucking. But C is average, and that's fine. But when they do it on like a 1 to 10 scale, it's just really stupid. Everything ends up 7s and 8s, and it's dumb and it's useless. It doesn't tell you anything, and so you end up splitting hairs over hundreds of points.
No, people literally get peeved off. This is I know in IGN in particular, this is an issue they run into all the time because they still use the 10-point scale. 7.9s. 7.9s people get so peeved about for whatever reason. It's 0.1 off from that 8, but man, it's not a good game if it's not an 8.
They shouldn't have point anything.
No.
Like, honestly, you putting a point in there is such like pseudo precision that it's dumb. It's really stupid. And actually, I don't know if you saw this, Caleb, but Matt Leese has a video on his new review system, which it's totally parody and it's hilarious. But he has like 47 different categories he reviews things on and runs them through this giant formula and stuff. It's pretty hilarious.
That's awesome. I promise I do not write for a movie website that does exactly what you're talking about.
So I guess my question to you guys is what would you be your preferred form of review? Because you have to walk that balance between being super analytical and providing that like super in-depth detail, and then catering to people like me who frankly is not going to read your entire article. I won't do it. I skip down to the bottom, usually the last paragraph, and I'll read that. The score doesn't matter so much to me typically because I've now learned over the years how terrible they actually are. But what are you guys? What is your preferred like means of learning about games kind of quickly?
Sure. I actually I enjoy I guess enjoy wouldn't be a good word. I appreciate the numbered system, even on IGN, because I think some things that just can't be communicated through just the general written review. So they can say in the written review, here are the things that I like, dislike about it. Trying to encompass that whole experience is really challenging, and I think having the more specific numbered scale really gives us a better picture of how the author thought of the game as a whole. And I think people are really ridiculous when they nitpick over hundredths of a point, and I think it's even worse when you hear about developers. I don't know if you ever heard about Fallout New Vegas. The development team was going to get a bonus if they achieved, I don't remember if it was a 9 or something like that.
It was an average Metacritic score of like a 90 or something like that.
Yeah, and they lost huge bonuses because of tiny little points on Metacritic, and I think that's a horrible abuse of the scale system. But what I really like is when I start to learn about these reviewers. Like I know the IGN reviewers pretty well.
Yeah.
I know how they review games. If this reviewer gives this score, I know I can compare from previous experiences whether I will enjoy that game or not. And so I think that the numbers communicate something that, for example, Eurogamer's new scale just won't be able to communicate as much. They can say, buy this game, but there are some games that get 7s that they might say, buy this game, but I wouldn't enjoy it, as where the same game might get, or a similar game might get an 8 on the numbered scale and still get the same buy this game. You know what I'm saying? Mm. So I feel like
it gives more separation, right? So because there's a lot of games that they're technically buy worthy, but that doesn't mean they're all necessarily in the same category of good either.
You're the type of person who understands that particular reviewer. Like you've read them enough, you understand their point of view on things. What about the average individual who's like, you know what, I have $60 every couple months to spend on a game. Is this going to be good or not? Does that work for that type of person?
Well, the interesting thing about the average Joe gamer that I've noticed is that I don't even know how much they pay attention to reviews very often. I think a lot of the people that are on IGN that are complaining over a tenth of a score difference are people that are frequenting those websites.
Yeah, no, I think you raise a good point. You're probably right. The average person isn't going to pay attention. They're going to go buy Madden or Call of Duty or the new Nintendo game or whatever because they always do, and they always think they're pretty good, and so the reviews probably don't matter so much to them. I think it's a totally fair point.
And here's the thing. we might actually, and this very well could be a topic on a future episode of the show, is the future of games journalism and the role of the critic. And then we've kind of talked to in a prior podcasts about because it's changing quite a bit. And I do I do get really fired up about this need to commodify and quantify the quality of a game. And I understand why it's there, and I think it's a useful tool. The problem is we have things like Metacritic and then you have gamers, a very vocal group of gamers, I should say, maybe not large, but very vocal group of gamers that will cling to Metascores like it's the Bible. When they need to realize Metacritic is a machine. It's basically trying to quantify something that's quality. And the nice thing about written game reviews is you're actually getting what makes this game quality, and then they quantify it at the end to give you a ballpark figure. Okay, so if this is on a scale of 1 to 10, here's how it falls. And I think that's a useful tool. I look at it. I don't adhere to it as much, but it does give you an idea, especially. And I think where Tyler's point, if you know the writers well enough, you can get an idea. Oh, well, this is what this person thought. They gave it like an 8.8, and the things that bother them don't bother me, or maybe they do bother me. So, okay, I totally see where they're coming from. But it's not like for me, it's not like oh man, well, this game got a 7. There's no way I'd ever pick this game up. Like, it's like, okay, well, let me go ahead and look in to see why, let me go watch some gameplay videos of it, or read the full review. And why did it give it 7? I mean, because I think it's a tool, but I don't think it's the be-all, end-all, and it really frustrates me when people cling to the number ratings. I don't like it at all. And it's because in a sense, yes, they are reviewing a product, right? That's where this whole system comes from. It comes from the same types of reviews you got from car magazines back in the night. When games reviews first started coming out in magazines, it was all based off of like other reviews in other industries, like the car industry, where it's a little more quantifiable, if that makes any sense, versus,
This is an art.
This is exactly what I was getting to, Austin. This is more of an art. I mean, yes, you can quantify it to some extent, but this is an art. I mean, I don't like it when movies do. It's the same issue with Rotten Tomatoes, with movies. Like, yeah, it's a good tool, but like, just because a movie's got a bad Rotten Tomatoes score doesn't mean it's a bad movie or a good movie. You know what I mean? So, it gets into that messy area where how do we rate art? And that's where I think to Tyler's point, I think it's very important for us to know our writers. If you really want to be well informed, I think it's good to know your writers, know where they're coming from, and hear what they have to say, and then decide whether it's something you're going to be interested in or not. You know what I mean? Because when you're reviewing art, it is very subjective. Now, yes, there are things like bugs and glitches and things that can be kind of broken out. Like, oh, it's just not a good game because it wasn't completed. But I mean, there are games out there that I would probably hate, that I do hate, that I'm sure Austin loves. So if I write a bad review and Austin writes a good review, and we go ahead and quantify it, say I get a Metascore of 20 and Austin gives it like an 80, and then it averages out like a 40 or whatever, or 45. That's not a very accurate rating of what the game might be like. You know what I mean? So it's very tough and a very messy, sticky situation we're in, and I think we're still kind of in that transition period because you do have some major outlets like IGN and GameStop still using the number score, which is fine. I don't hate it. I just don't think. I do think the future is going to be more like what Austin's talking about, where it's a little more recommendation based, a little more AB. I personally like the ABCD scale the best myself. Tyler, actually, on that news, Austin, thank you so much for sharing that bit of news there. I think that's going to be part of an ongoing conversation we're probably going to be having on this podcast here in the future. Tyler, what news story piqued your interest this week?
I was actually really excited to hear about Playtonic Games, and this is a new developer that just announced that they exist and that they're working on a game. It sounds to me like a toy company or something.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a good thing, actually, with the kinds of games that they're developing. But yeah, it's a bunch of former Rare developers who have gotten together. They're developers that worked on Donkey Kong Country and a few other great games. And right now they're working on a new title that is sort of a spiritual successor to the classic old platformer game series. And they haven't revealed a ton on it at this point, except for, did you guys see the little sort of concept art for it?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, they just released some concept art that looks kind of like a jungle with a couple eyes showing through. Has kind of a Banjo and Kazooie vibe.
Oof,
with,
I like it.
With the two eyes, almost like a kind of a pair, a team. And I'm really, really excited to see what this team has put together and has been working on. Because I think there's a lack, other than Nintendo, of course, there's a lack of sort of cartoony, high-quality, mascot-like characters that used to be really prevalent during the early PlayStation N64 days that have kind of gone to the wayside in the name of heavy action, guns, hyper-realism. Realism.
Everything's brown and gritty.
Yeah, yeah. And so going back to these great characters, these great little worlds with some solid 3D platforming from a developer other than Nintendo would just be a breath of fresh air.
No, absolutely. You know, we hinted at earlier, I am a massive fan of platformers, and honestly, I still have a broken heart when I think about the fact that Nintendo could have bought Rare in the N64 era, and they didn't. Like, I felt like that was a marriage, almost, practically, right?
Yeah.
Like they were just very complementary to each other. I mean, at that point in time, Rare fit the same Nintendo, imaginative Nintendo style, and like you almost wouldn't know that they were separate. Like it fit under the umbrella. It fit in the family, right? Now I know by the time that Rare ended up getting sold off and bought by Microsoft, there were already some issues, some tension between Rare and Nintendo that I'm not fully aware of. That was the reason that Nintendo did not buy them. But you know, I'm very excited to see a lot of the founders and the early developers from Rare going back, and they're actually going to go and try to recapture the spirit that they're known for back in the Super Nintendo and N64 days. Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie will always have an incredibly special place in my heart. Love those games. And I'm very sad that they are only available on Xbox Live, and I don't have a 360 anymore. So, great games. Great games.
Yeah, and the character artist that... the character designer that made Banjo and Kazooie is actually working on for Playtonic Games, and maybe the similarities, the kind of touch of Banjo Kazooie that I can see in this concept art, may be really the result of that. I think we're going to see something similar. It's
gonna be a polar bear and a vulture instead of the they're kind of like, we can't make Banjo Kazooie, but we can make these other characters.
It does look like some kind of bird.
Banjo Patootie.
And they've been releasing hints on their Twitter and Facebook pages toward what they're working on. So I think we're going to find out soon. They released a photo of 3 sort of D batteries. So either 3DS or 3D platformer or something.
Just be on 3D. Nintendo. Just be on Nintendo. I don't care. I mean, honestly, I don't really care because I have a PlayStation 4 and I know it's probably whatever it is probably going to be on there. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm so excited.
It's funny because they're doing this, and I imagine they're going to make another kind of Banjo-Kazooie almost clone.
Yeah.
And then you have Mighty Number 9 coming out from the guy who kind of worked on the original Mega Mans, and it's pretty much exactly Mega Man. It's kind of like taking back these franchises in a way from the companies that basically, one, either done nothing with them, or two, done terrible things with them.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
It's kind of exciting.
That's the thing. I wouldn't be complaining as much if there was actually Banjo-Kazooie games coming out ever, but the last one that came out was Nuts and Bolts, which was not even a Banjo-Kazooie. I mean, it had the characters, but that was a build, it was a build a vehicle game, which is not bad. But when you're expecting a Banjo-Kazooie game and you get a build a vehicle game, you're just like, what?
We don't feel the same way, I think, about Donkey Kong. I think we've gotten decent Donkey Kong games over the years and been fine with it. But because Nintendo has continued to make quality games with that franchise, which they always own that franchise, obviously.
That's cool. Playtronic Games. Check them out on Twitter. Follow them on Facebook. I do neither, but you better believe as soon as I'm done recording this podcast, I'm going to be following them very closely. Because I got to get a peek at this concept art, and maybe cross our fingers, folks. Maybe we can hear something at the E3 this year.
Absolutely.
Okay, so actually, about a week ago now. So this is probably, definitely by the time this is published, it's probably going to be old news. But about a week ago, a little over a week ago, there was this announcement that hit the internet, and it caused me to stop and be like, normally I would say this is April Fool's, except for it's February, so it's not April Fool's Day. Normally I'd say, well, this is someone trying to just cash in on a story. But it was on a Saturday. If I remember correctly, it was either on a Friday evening or a Saturday. At times, these stories aren't normally broken. And it was broken by the Wall Street Journal. The news that Nintendo is working with Netflix to develop a live-action Zelda TV show. Austin's not a fan. I don't even know what to think, guys. I mean, this is huge. This is huge. Zelda is probably the gaming franchise at this point, right? It's been around for over 25 years now. Everyone at some point who's ever played a video game has probably played a Zelda game. It's a fantasy, which right now with Game of Thrones being as hot as it is, it's something that could actually, it's feasible.
Probably second only to Mario.
He's second only to Mario, really, yeah. No, I agree. But even Zelda's... But Mario, you can't... I mean, as we've seen, there's not really a good way to make a Mario movie. I mean, there's not really any story.
They did it. Didn't stop them.
Oh, God.
That movie does not exist.
They're brothers. They're plumbers. Oh no. Mario! Luigi! They're on the trail of a kidnapped princess and a mystical meteorite. It's incredible! That gives anyone who possesses it the power to rule the universe. Get me the rock! Super Mario Brothers. This ain't no game.
We will not speak of this.
That's probably what you could expect from this television show.
No!
There's no way it'll be that bad.
No, it can't be that bad.
That with some nice, excuse me, princess.
Oh, no. Here's the thing, Austin. Here's the thing, Austin, but this is not just anybody developing this. This is not going to be on the CW here, okay? This is going to be on Netflix. And let's just look at the shows Netflix has developed. They are on par with HBO. I don't think they're quite as up there in terms of actual storytelling as HBO, but their quality, like their production value, is easily on par with the best HBO shows. House of Cards is great. Orange is the New Black is great.
Tell me, what do you enjoy about Zelda games? There is like 10 minutes worth of story in Zelda games. There's not that much story. It's mostly dungeons and problem solving and things like that. What are you going to do in a television show? There's not that much source material to work with.
Well, Austin,
perspective.
I would totally agree with you, except for we live in the era where a Lego movie happened. And I said exactly the same argument, and it was incredible. And I was like, holy crap, man. I mean, I don't even know anymore. It's all about who they get developing the show. And, I mean, as we saw with the Lego movie, they were able to figure out what it was, the basic, if you boil it down, what people like about Legos, and were able to use that as a sort of thematic device in which to tell a different story.
That's a fair point. I do not have confidence they'll be able to replicate that kind of success with this. I really don't.
Well, that's fair. And I'll be honest, I was expecting at some point there to be a Zelda project. I fully expected it to be like a 3D animated movie, honestly.
You know what would make an amazing television series?
What?
The Elder Scrolls. That would be fantastic.
Well, yeah, but you run into this...
Zelda?
There's a lot of stuff you could do with Zelda, though. There is. I mean, there's a lot of mythology there. I mean...
Zelda is by definition... Well, not by definition, but every game is pretty much formulaic. Like, there's not much to talk about.
I don't know about that, Austin. I used to spend a lot of time talking about the Zelda timeline, so, I mean, there's...
the difficulty... Like you mentioned, the timelines and things like that. The difficulty, I think, with Zelda is that Zelda games have a lot of lore about the world, but they really don't have a huge plot, a story.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
So they have a lot of lore to work with, which is excellent start, but finding a particular plot to drive the show forward is going to be challenging. But
they would have to invent one. And then
they would have to
really
invent one.
Yes, fair enough. I will give them that. Yes, they would have to invent one. I'll give them that. Yeah.
But I want to be optimistic about this. I really do, because I love Zelda. I wish it was an animated series. I think I'd be a lot more optimistic about it than a live-action one, because I think the transition would be easier.
Yes.
But...
optimism just leads to heartbreak, my friend.
Oh.
I know, but still,
You have
I
to
think
be- you have to
Nintendo.
be a crotchety man like me to make it through life.
But I feel like at this point, in the past couple years, Nintendo has finally started to realize, maybe for the first time, what they have in Zelda, how much they have with this game series, and how much people truly love the series. Yes, so I think Nintendo finally realized what they have with Zelda and how much fans really appreciate this series. And at this point, I think they've learned, or I hope that they've learned at least, from their mistakes in the early 90s with the movie that shall not be named, and the different TV shows like the Zelda TV show, which was atrocious, and the Super Mario Bros. Show, which was slightly better but still terrible.
Dude, I watched that when I was a kid. I'm not joking. The Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
Hey, paisanos, it's the Super Mario Brothers Super Show! We're the Mario Brothers, and plumbing's our game. We're not like the others who get all the fame. If your sink is in trouble, you can call us on the double. We're faster than the others, you'll be hooked on the brothers.
Some things are better left not seen again, and that's a fact.
Sure.
That's a
But
fact.
I'm hoping Nintendo takes what they learned from that and moves on to actually say, okay, we're going to protect our IP, and they've been very protective. A lot of people have offered to make TV shows and movies of games like Zelda over the years, and Nintendo has just shut them down. So I'm hoping Nintendo is holding this close to the chest and saying, Netflix, we're going to allow you to do this, but we want to be involved with every stage.
Yep.
And really make sure that this is done right, because
would-
it could damage their IP if they don't.
I would
if they
agree
mess it
with
up.
you, except Nintendo's trend over the past year has been like, we're going to license this shit to anyone.
Everybody,
Anyone who
yeah.
will give us money, they can have it. We don't care.
Well,
Just give us money.
yes and no. I mean, because it did do Hyrule Warriors, and I, while it's not exactly my cup of tea, it's apparently a pretty decent game. I
But
don't know.
I think it's good because it has Zelda stuff in it, though. That's the thing. I'm interested in buying it, Hyrule Warriors, eventually. But without all of that Zelda stuff in it, I don't think I would be very interested in it as a game itself.
Well, it's
the
Dynasty
IP
Warriors.
itself isn't that great. It's okay from what I hear, and there are some huge fans, and I respect that. It's not my kind of game, but it's not. Nintendo didn't have a really reputable developer working on this game. It really could have gone wrong in the development process.
That's true.
So they were very trusting to license out one of their most important IPs associated with quality.
It was, but it was to a developer that they trusted. It wasn't like they just said, like, a developer approached them and offered them, hey, let's make a Zelda game.
Yeah.
You know, and it seemed like it's been more of a partnership than anything. But I mean, that said, yes, Nintendo, I think, is trying to open up, and I think they're trying to figure out how to license these properties out without just cashing in, right? I think the fact that it's Netflix especially says something. I mean, because this could have been anybody. I mean, other than if it was anybody but Netflix or HBO, I'd be concerned. But it's one of those two. I'm somewhere between Tyler and Austin on this. I am skeptical and I am worried. But I am also an idealistic optimist at times, and this is something I really want to be optimistic about. I wish I was more excited, but because it's something I care so much about, I am also with Team Austin here, where I'm like, well, there's a lot of ways this could go wrong. And honestly, guys, and I don't want to sound like a downer here, I really hope this comes to fruition, and I hope we get to see it. But I feel like I'm betting this is in super early talks. I'm betting there's no talent on board. I feel like this is purely talks, and I feel like at any point Netflix or Nintendo, more likely Nintendo, could kill this thing. So I'm not getting my hopes up. I don't expect, even if this does make it, it's going to be at least like 3 years, I bet, before we see this, if it makes it.
Especially for something so huge. This would be a huge thing, require a lot of computer stuff for the monsters, things like that.
Well, yeah, and then you run into that issue. I mean, how do you do this type of stuff on a TV show budget? I mean, Game of Thrones has a massive budget, $70 million a season for 10 episodes, and theirs looks great. But I don't know, like Zelda seems like it has more of those types of creatures, unlike Game of Thrones, where there's like dragons, and every once in a while some occasional CG stuff, but it's mostly just the dragons that you don't see every episode. You see them like once every 2 or 3 times a season, maybe.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I'm gonna audition for Tingle.
dude, you should do it. You do it, Austin. You're the boy who can't grow up. You really want that fairy. That's why you're such a downer all the time. You're always like, man, I'm just heartbroken because Miyamoto did not give me a Navi for Christmas. That's what it is. All right, guys. Well, enough on the news front. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on. I really can't wait to see how all of these stories develop. It seems like we got a lot of really cool stuff on our plate. But let's go ahead and move on to what we've been playing over the last couple of weeks. Austin, can you go ahead and kick us off? Give us a little rundown. And no, don't talk about Destiny again.
I actually was going to speak on it for a moment because I haven't played it hardly at all for the past like 3 weeks.
What?
It's true. It's true. It got to a point where the things that I need, there's no clear path to getting them. And so I just pop on like once a week to do my nightfalls and weeklies, and then I don't do anything else. But what I have been playing is I did buy Grim Fandango.
Nice.
I know you bought that, Caleb. I'm going to let you talk about that one. I have been playing a lot of Shadow of Mordor, which has been pretty great. I've had a lot of fun with it. It doesn't grab me the same way, we'll talk about this more later, Assassin's Creed does, but it's been pretty good. The kind of Lord of the Rings kind of environment in it is decent, but ultimately it's been a little bland so far. I'll have more on that, I guess, when I finally finish it someday. And then the free game for the Vita this past month was Rogue Legacy, or one of the free games. And I've been really, really enjoying that. It was a game that I watched a lot of people play that seemed like it wouldn't be something that I would like because I hate redoing things. But the kind of like underlying progression in that game where you're slowly getting better and better gear for each of that gets passed down to your new character every time you die is kind of cool, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit, and I can definitely see myself getting better with each run. Even I'm on like 33rd run, which is
nice.
Not really that far in, but I'm definitely getting farther each and every time, so it's been pretty cool. I highly recommend that game, at least in its early stages. If you have a Vita, it's free. Go check it out.
Well, Austin, and just curious on the Shadows of Mordor, and we can talk more about it later. Because Tyler, you've already played Shadows of Mordor, correct?
I started it, but got distracted, actually.
Okay,
So I'm not too far into it.
Okay, gotcha. That's a game I do at some point in time want to play. Just is way down my list. Now, that is basically Lord of the Rings has a baby with Assassin's Creed with a hint of... what was the other game that
Arkham Asylum.
Arkham Asylum, yeah, that's it. Yeah, is that kind of, is that, would you say that's a pretty accurate description?
I think that's pretty accurate. It's a bit more stealthy, I think, than Assassin's Creed, but it is kind of open world. It's probably got more Arkham Asylum in it, honestly, than Assassin's Creed.
Okay.
It's just that the environments are not that interesting to me, and that's why I like Assassin's Creed, is the environments, the buildings, the climbing. It's fun for me. This is kind of bland so far. It's pretty open, desolate, wasteland kind of landscape, and it hasn't been exciting from that perspective thus far. I'm still pretty early on, so
Gotcha.
Maybe it picks up.
Well, I've heard the rival system is a big feature in that game. It's supposed to be pretty cool and also slightly irritating, but again, I haven't played myself.
That is pretty neat. If you're going to play it, don't die, ever. Never die, because if you do, the game just screws you. It's so bad. I went in and I tried to fight a guy, and all of a sudden so there's captains. You have to kill the captains.
Right.
I think there's like war chiefs, and it gets even more complicated the further along you get in the game. But I was just going to kill one captain, and then as I'm fighting this guy, 2 more show up, and because I ended up dying, all 3 of them got stronger. It's like a brutally punishing game for when you suck, and I'm perpetually sucky at everything I do, so. It makes this game really, really difficult for me. But it was a very quick lesson in that always run away and always be stealthy if you can. Like going in and fighting like I do in Assassin's Creed, just murder everybody because I can, doesn't work in this game, I don't think. At least not in the early stages.
Gotcha. Yeah. I've heard mostly good things about it, but yeah, also very frustrating. If you do tend to die a lot. Well, I can't wait to hear more from both of you guys on that, and hopefully one day I can sink my teeth into it if I ever get caught up on my back catalog here. Tyler, how about you? What have you been playing the last couple weeks?
I have been on a bit of a Zelda binge. I started Wind Waker. I'm in the middle of that, and I'm playing back through Ocarina of Time 3D on the 3DS in anticipation of playing Majora's Mask 3D. And I'm particularly excited for Majora's Mask 3D because I've never played Majora's Mask. I missed the whole N64 era. Ocarina of Time, the first time I was able to play it was on the 3DS. And so I first played through it about almost exactly 2 years ago. And so I'm really excited to play through Majora's Mask. So I've been on Zelda all month.
Yeah, hey, that's a good franchise to get hooked on. I mean, like once you get like that craving for a Zelda game, there's just like nothing else that there can totally fill it. And I run into that same issue. I find when I'm playing Zelda, I play it like you, like I'm playing one on the console and on the handheld all at the same time for like a month, and then I don't play them again for like a year or whatever. Yeah. I'm kind of in that same territory now. Now I'm not playing Wind Waker or replaying Ocarina of Time, but I've been doing Majora's Mask 3D that just came out a couple days ago. Well, Tyler, I can tell you this much. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask could not be more different, despite being built off of the same engine.
Sure.
It is Majora's Mask is unlike any other Zelda game, and honestly is still, the more I think about it and think about all the other games out there, either in other franchises, it really is one of a kind. For better or for worse, depending on who you ask. It's a game that I hated initially, but it's grown on me tremendously over the last several years.
I find it to be a good game that is not a Zelda game. That's the way I look at it. To me, it's at its core not a Zelda game.
See, I don't know. Like the core mechanics are the same, I feel like, but but you're on a time. You're on a timer.
And to me, what made Zelda beautiful was that I could explore and take my time and check things out and solve puzzles at my own pace and do things all I wanted at my own pace, which cannot be done in Majora's Mask, at least not without frustration.
Well, and honestly, if you don't, they're just spoilers for Majora's Mask, folks. But there's a song.
Don't make them big, 'cause I haven't played it yet.
No. It's not like a story spoiler or anything.
Okay,
but
okay.
There's a song that. And they've made it a lot more evident in the 3DS version, but in the original game, they never really explicitly told you about. You can actually slow down time by half if you play the Song of Time backwards. And that actually makes things, I mean, you're still on a timer, but it's significantly less frustrating when you're doing that, because it can be pretty tough on that normal timer to beat all those dungeons and such. Especially since every dungeon in this one has like a pre-dungeon, right? So you've got it's there's only 4 dungeons in the game, but before every one you have to go through a whole set of puzzles to learn the song that gets you into the dungeon, and then once you get in the dungeon, you have the actual dungeon. I think it's probably one of the densest Zelda games, if that makes any sense. Like the map is not as big as Ocarina of Time, it's not as big as most Zelda games, but the amount of things you can do is really cool. I felt like Clock Town is probably the most, in this history of Zelda games, feels the most like an actual town where people live and do stuff in.
Clock Town could be a game all on its own.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the number of side quests in Clock Town is crazy. And that's what's really cool about it. Like, you're just walking around and you see this something that's kind of weird, and you're like, oh, I wonder what that's about. Check it out.
I always felt like that game, like, Clock Town was its own thing. It had its own thing going on and was its own game. And then they were like, well, shit, we have to put dungeons in here, so let's just tack on some dungeons into the game to make it Zelda.
No. I don't think it
never really worked. Truthfully, I didn't get that far because it frustrated me and I shut it off.
Austin, I think you should give it another shot at some point in your adult life.
I will. Look, it's not going to be Link to the Past.
No.
Put it that way.
No.
That game, best Zelda game ever of all time.
Well, except for Ocarina of Time.
No.
I don't want to get too deep into the Majora's Mask hole, go down the Majora's Mask rabbit hole here. Me and Tyler and I, hopefully, once he gets caught into it and gets to spend a little more time, we're going to try and do like some sort of a review for you guys out there. We'll be posting on our YouTube and our podcast page, hopefully. But there's actually a lot to talk about in this game, and I'm not even just talking about like game mechanics. Like this game is dealing with some very interesting themes, dark themes, obviously, with the moon crashing in the world, but it's very layered, and the Link's goals in Majora's Mask are not the goals yes, he's trying to save the world, but he's trying to do it on an entirely different level than he's ever had to do it before, which is very micro-personable. Like, he's saving people's lives one-to-one. So there's a lot to talk about there. Majora's Mask 3D, it's a great game. That's kind of Tyler, was that all you've been playing right here? Is it cool if I segue into?
Pretty much. I started a couple weeks ago. I started Shadow of Mordor, but I got distracted by Zelda, and so it's pretty much what I've been playing for the past couple weeks.
Gotcha. Well, so fun fact about Majora's Mask, and a lot of it's been coming out in these interviews with Anuma about the game. So the reason Majora's Mask exists is because they had that Zelda Master Quest that came out. Anuma, the guy who worked on Ocarina of Time and went on to produce and now he directed Majora's Mask, and he's directed and produced each Zelda game since then. He did not like the idea of just making new dungeons in the same game. So Miyamoto said, all right, well, you can go do your own thing with your own little development team right here. The thing is, you only have a year to make the game. So have at it, because we want to get more Zelda content out fast, right? So Majora's Mask is a product of basically a sort of pseudo-agreement bet that him and that Enuma and Miyamoto had, like that he couldn't make a Zelda game in a year. And that explains why the game reuses all the same assets. I mean, honestly, it looks like the game at times looks like a mod, a really awesome mod, because that's how much it borrows from Ocarina of Time. But
that's totally fine with me. I think the more games should do that. If they have something
right
as different, the differences between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, like that's definitely a whole nother game. It's not like a cash grab type thing.
Right.
More games should do that sort of thing. Borrow the assets, just totally fine, and make a new game out of it.
Exactly. Well, this is going to lead... Oh, I guess I should talk about Grim Fandango, sorry. The other game I've been playing is Grim Fandango. I haven't got to sink quite as much time into as I would have liked because I bought it a couple weeks ago, but I feel like I time traveled back to the 90s, legitimately, and it's really funny, and it's really inventive, and there are puzzles that I literally want to punch a wall through. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you walk around, you think you've looked at all the angles, and then the answer to the puzzle ends up being something super obvious, but you would never think of it. You know what I mean?
It's rough. Some of the puzzles are rough.
Yeah. I kind of like it, but it's annoying.
I had to look 2 of them up so far, where I was like, I can't do it. I've spent an hour and a half on this one stupid puzzle, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. The game does not hold your hand at all. And again, coming from an era where games were a little bit harder and did a lot less hand holding than they do these days, but I still recommend it. I want to beat it. Hopefully I can put more time into it now that
How far are you in the second chapter yet?
I am in chapter 3.
Okay, so you're farther than me. I'm in chapter 2 right
3. So it's a cool game. I need to finish it so I can give like more developed thoughts on it. But thus far, it feels like a huge throwback. I like the enhanced graphics effects. All the pre-renders still look exactly the same. Really, the big difference is there's a lighting system, so there's like shadows and stuff now. I like it. Some game reviewers didn't care for it. I'm like, in my mind, it just brings a little more depth to what we have.
I didn't play the original, but as it stands, it looks nice. It definitely shows its age in some of the mechanics, like switching between items is asinine.
Yeah, the controls feel very clunky. I'll say that much.
But it's been fun, and the story's been pretty great so far. Like I said, only in chapter 2, so pretty early on, but I like it quite a bit.
Oh, very cool. So Austin said. So hopefully by the time we get to we record our next episode, we'll be able to talk about maybe we wrapped up with that game. We'll see. All right, guys. Well, that's what we've been playing the last couple weeks, and it's a great segue talking about 1-year Zeldas and Assassin's Creed and all this, because today we're talking about what I call the Groundhog Day effect of the video game industry, which is you play the game franchise. Sometimes it takes us a couple months to beat it, and by the time you get done with it, there's just another one coming out, and it plays exactly the same. What is it? It's annualized game franchises. Yearly game franchises have been around since the dawn of the modern gaming era, to be honest. If you go back and look at, with sports franchises like Madden arriving in 1988, annual game releases have mostly kind of been secluded to sports franchises for the most part, like the Blitz series, the FIFA series, and all that, throughout the GameCube, Xbox, PlayStation 2 era. There were exceptions, of course, as always, but I felt like they were a lot less common at that point in time. You can even go back and start doing research on, you had a lot of Resident Evils that came up, but they were different. They were Resident Evil games, but they were different like genres and styles. It wasn't like we were getting the exact same game every single year, with the exception of sports franchises. But if you go back and look, really where we get this whole model that we're currently on now began with the successes of Call of Duty 2 and Assassin's Creed 2. Now, Call of Duty 1, of course, was a huge hit on the PC. Eventually made it when Call of Duty 2, I believe, was the first one on the consoles with the Xbox 360. It was a huge hit. They wanted to get a sequel out fast. So Infinity Ward at the time said they couldn't develop a sequel that fast. So what they did was they hired another studio called Treyarch to come in and develop a game. So the way they did their annualized franchises is by alternating studios every year. So really, each studio is spending 2 years per game. And then you look at Assassin's Creed 2, another huge staple that we see today. First Assassin's Creed came out, and I think it was 2007. Huge success. And then we didn't see another one until, was it 2009, guys? I think 2009 for Assassin's Creed 2? 2009, 2010.
Yes, I think it was 2009.
2009, so there's a couple of years in there. And then after that point, it's where we're going to have this other studio develop a sequel that'll come out the next year. And then we didn't see, the original development team come back until Assassin's Creed 3. But in between, you've got all these studios that are starting to make these kind of filler in-between games so that they can continue to have a game, an annual release, so that fans can continue to play their favorite games without having to wait for 2 or 3 years. Now, this makes, from a business perspective, this is gold, right? These franchises are expensive, especially when you're investing in these IPs and you're investing in a new engine. It's extremely expensive. From a business perspective, it makes sense. However, what is it doing to the quality of these franchises? Is it hurting them? Are we burning out on these franchises? And if so, is this actually starting to hurt the industry? And you see things like the Halo franchise starting to adopt the same thing, and it seems like these annualized franchises, instead of innovating like they used to, are relying a lot more on what worked in the past with little tweaks here and there. So it seems like it's a lot more safe and almost manufactured assembly line style. So let's go ahead and kick this conversation off. Let's get a feel for how we all feel. Tyler, do you ever had, or do you have a favorite game franchise that has been annualized at some point in time?
Well, I think Assassin's Creed is the perfect example for me of a fall out of grace as far as I'm concerned with a major IP. So I fell in love with Assassin's Creed 2. I absolutely loved that game. Was one of my favorite games ever at the time that I first played it. I got super excited for Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. I really, really enjoyed Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Then the following year, Assassin's Creed Revelations released, and I still enjoyed it a lot. I was still really excited about it, but it just wasn't quite the same for me. It wasn't exciting. It had some issues. It wasn't quite as unique as Assassin's Creed 2 and even Brotherhood. And then Assassin's Creed 3 the following year, it just went downhill year by year. I became less and less excited about the new release. And Assassin's Creed Black Flag was last year. I picked that one up, but I got it later on the PlayStation 4. I didn't feel the need. I didn't have a problem waiting. Then Assassin's Creed Unity came out, and I just completely lost interest in the series as a whole, with both Assassin's Creed Unity and Assassin's Creed Rogue. It wasn't so much that I did not enjoy Black Flag. Black Flag was a fun game. I think a combination of the fact that the IP comes out every single year and just a general sense of a lack of innovation with the whole series made me just completely lose interest in the Assassin's Creed games entirely. I went from having it be one of my favorite video game IPs to a series that I don't even have any interest in buying, and I don't even feel compelled to buy or even play Unity and Rogue. If I was given a copy of the games for free, I don't know that I would play them. So that's a huge fall out of grace as far as I'm concerned, and I think a lot of that has to do with the annualization and some of the other decisions that they've made with the IP in particular.
Do you think that it was because of a lack of quality, or was it an oversaturation?
A little bit of both, because Assassin's Creed Black Flag really, as far as the series goes, hit the right places. It did the Assassin's Creed-ish type things really well. It took what was in all of the previous games and really perfected them and did them well. But I started to get a sense in the series that every single game that they released had to include everything from the previous games. And so now we have, the previous game had ships, so now we definitely need to include ships in this one. We can't do it without ships because then people will be upset because last year we had ships in it. And
They didn't, though. Unity didn't have ships.
At all?
Not that I know of. I mean,
Well,
I played a good chunk of it. I didn't get to finish it because I rented it. Disclosure.
sure.
But there were no ships. Now Rogue has ships.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah, yeah.
last gen kind of filler game, I think.
Sure, it is. But that's just one example, I think, in
Right. No,
general.
I
But
get what you're saying. It all is very formulaic, and they're like, well, we're going to tack this on to what we already did, and tack this
yeah,
on to what we already did. I get that.
sure. And perhaps a better example would be the collectibles in Assassin's Creed Black Flag. They had been adding collectibles, different kinds, with each Assassin's Creed series, and it eventually got to a point where the map in Black Flag was ridiculously filled to the point where it was just ridiculous. It was just dumb how many things there were to just run over to and collect. And nobody ever said, "Hey, does it make sense to include this? Is this a little bit too much?"
Mm.
Rather, instead, it seems like, well, last year's entry had it, so we need to include it. Perhaps the collectibles were a better example than the boats.
I have to address the Assassin's Creed in particular because I am probably a fanboy. I guess you could call me that a little bit of the series. Um, Played the first one. It was amazing. I thought it was like a really, honestly, an innovative game at the time in the games industry. I think it did a lot of things that no one else had done yet. Second one really fulfilled on a lot of promises of the first. And then Brotherhood, Revelations were decent. Assassin's Creed 3 was kind of trash. Black Flag for me has been the pinnacle of the series. From a collectible perspective, I totally agree with you. They've been kind of silly the way they've added a lot of things. However, they added the shanties, which is fantastic. Which is, if you don't know what the shanties are, they're collectibles, but you collect songs that your sailors kind of sing as you're sailing across the ocean, which is fantastic. Unity is more of a return to what the franchise traditionally is. And the reasons I enjoyed those games was because I like to explore the cities. And I'm an architecture major in college and stuff, and so it's been fun to kind of check out the buildings and things. But from an annualized franchise perspective, I guess it doesn't bother me that they come out every year. If I decide I don't want to buy it, I don't have to, you know? And for example, I didn't buy Unity. I think I've bought all the others to this point. I didn't buy Unity, I rented it, and I might buy it at some point, but I'm not in a rush to purchase it. And to me, Call of Duty, Madden, all those games are the same thing. Like they come out every year, they're roughly the same, and if I really want to jump into that experience with like some new missions kind of, then I can, or I could choose not to. But I don't think it hurts the quality of the franchises typically. Where I get more concerned is when, and Ubisoft is the, I love Ubisoft, but they're terrible with this, is, well, we have a formula in Assassin's Creed and it works really, really well. Let's apply it to every game we ever make forever. So you have Far Cry, you have, oh shoot, what was the other game that came out? Watch Dogs.
Yeah,
All
Watch
these
Dogs.
games have the same things. Where you're going to climb a tower, open up part of a map. You're going to do the missions within this. You're going to go to another area and climb another tower. Like, it's really bizarre, and to me, that's more dangerous than just an annualized franchise. At least when it's annualized, I know what I'm getting. I know what I'm buying. When I invest into a new franchise, and it's the same thing I already played in Assassin's Creed, and I've already decided I didn't want to buy that game anymore, but I just bought it, but it's reskinned with something else. That to me is far more dangerous.
Well, yeah, that's fair, but I mean, isn't that to some degree that's kind of what's going on, though? I mean, not fully. I don't want to, because I don't want to be hard. I have not played every game in every one of these franchises, right? So I do not have an intimate relationship with any of these games, and when I say intimate, you know what I mean. You know the ins and outs and the intricacies of each game. And I don't. I'm not anyways invested in any of the annualized franchises. Probably the closest I have is Assassin's Creed, that followed by Call of Duty, because I did play, there was a streak there where I played like 3 Call of Duty games in a row, and then just, it just got old.
But does that hurt you? So if you stop playing, so you played like 3 Call of Duty games in a row, and you say, I'm not going to play anymore for a couple of years, and I'm just going to buy the next one that comes out this next time. Does that hurt you to do that? Like, when I jump into the series again, I pretty much picked up where I left off with new stuff. Is that any different than what the traditional development arcs were, where you had one came out every 3 to 4 years?
Yes.
Is it different to wait?
Yes.
How so?
Yes. Because franchises evolve, right? So, I mean, I could do this, but you could do this with any number of franchises. And, I'm guilty to some extent, Super Smash Brothers being a huge one. Yeah, it's a lot more the same. But they're all different, though. And that's a point I might be jumping ahead a little bit because I do want to talk about regular franchises that aren't annual, and how that makes the impact. I think there's a difference there because what it is you're allowed to kind of take a step back, and when you jump back in with a new game that hasn't come out for a few years, it's like saying hi to an old friend who's kind of grown up a little bit, right? So I haven't seen this guy in 4 years. Now when I meet them again, I love this person. They're my friend, right? And they've grown a lot, so they're a little different. Correct. They've evolved as a human being. But they still feel like the same person. If this analogy works at all. So, it might be goofy. Versus I have, that guy from high school that hasn't changed in the last 5 years, and I just go back into town, he's exactly the same, and I'm like, that's kind of makes me sad a little bit, honestly.
If I bought Modern Warfare 2, I was like, oh, this is fun. Whatever. And I didn't buy it for several years. And then I bought Advanced Warfare. I think I would get that same feeling, would I not?
To some extent, I think Advanced Warfare, because I have actually a little bit of experience with it. I didn't buy it, but I did rent it for a few days. And that one definitely feels like to some extent, and maybe it's because it's been a couple entries I've missed, there's definitely a hint of evolution there, right? The problem is I would much rather them take a break, innovate and invest in innovate in these properties and see what new they can really do versus literally reuse what they've already made, add on a few new features, and then put it out next year because that's exactly what Madden does. And yes, every once in a while a great Madden game comes out. Why not release one really great Madden, have patches or DLC updates where you can just run off the same engine? Why? Because they don't make as much money if they do that.
Right. And I think Madden is to me, the ultimate example of kind of the cash grab aspect of it. You can make arguments for Call of Duty, and while I may not, I'm definitely not going to buy it every single year. I can understand that there are slight updates and stuff. I don't see that in Madden so much. Maybe that's because I'm just uneducated. But I don't know. I just feel like if you want to buy it every year, it's there for you. But if I don't want to, it doesn't hurt me to wait a couple years and buy it again. I feel like that development cycle ends up having the same effect if I wait.
The difference between, say, what Nintendo does, for example, we'll start with Nintendo. Everyone does this, all right? Or Skyrim, Elder Scrolls, Fallout. I miss Fallout. Now, I can always go back and play Fallout 3, and it's still going to be a great game, and I'm going to love it. But it's not going to give me the same sensation of, wow, this is something new. And honestly, if a new Fallout game came out every year, I would play it because I love Fallout, and I guarantee you, I would run into the same problem that Tyler ran into with Assassin's Creed, where it's like, well, not a lot's changed. I'd rather you go away. I'd rather my friend from high school go away, better himself, go to college, invest in a skill, whatever, grow up a little bit. We meet up together. I'm like, dude, it's cool to see how this thing has changed. It's cool.
What if it sucks, though? What if it's Duke Nukem Forever?
Blow it out your ass.
Well, Duke Nukem Forever had issues.
Yeah.
And sometimes your friends from high school don't go on to do better and better things, and it makes your heart very sad.
It could be The Last Guardian. Maybe The Last Guardian comes out, and it's trash.
But The Last Guardian is not a sequel to an existing franchise either.
I feel like it is. It isn't. Is it not?
No, it's not. It's made by the same studio that made Shadows of the Colossus and what was it?
Well, fair enough.
But
it's kind of a spiritual successor in some ways.
Yes,
but it's not really a direct sequel.
No, not a direct sequel. And you're right. Games come out and they suck. We've seen this. I mean, but Fallout did take that model. No, except it wasn't every year. They did Fallout New Vegas, which was not a bad game, but you get the feeling that you're playing more of the same. Or another more recent example I thought of was the Arkham Origins, which, by the way, I had a great time with Arkham Origins. Great time. It was 2 years after Arkham City. Had a great time. The story was great, but it certainly didn't feel nearly as inspired as Arkham Asylum or Arkham City. And then you found out, oh, well, it's because Rocksteady's actually making a real sequel to those games. And when I say real sequel, it's actually like they're going out of the way. What can we do different with this franchise to make it better, and not just add on a few features that people want, but actually how can we evolve and grow this franchise into something else? I don't have problems with games doing that. I have problems with games because if a Batman game came out every year, I guarantee, as much as I love that franchise, and I thought Arkham Origins was fine. They do that every 2 years even. It's not as bad. But when you do it every year, there's just something about games that don't change enough over time. They don't evolve enough, and they come out every year. There's something that just cheapens the brand about. In my opinion, it just cheapens the brand. Like, it just feels like more of the same.
I think EA has the right strategy right now with this, in that their plan going forward is to release Battlefield, the next year release Battlefront, and then Battlefield, and then Battlefront. And they're truthfully pretty much the same game, but they attract a different audience. They have different skins to them, more or less, and I'm assuming they're going to do something a little differently with them. I think that could give the person who wants to buy into it every single year the option of doing so, but also give the person who's like, I want to really see some innovation and things moving forward, and I only want to buy Battlefield, or I only want to buy Battlefront. Give them the chance to have that kind of experience as well.
Because Battlefront is different. Battlefront has like star galactic combat and all sorts of crazy stuff. Like it is the same game at its core, but it is not the same. Like it feels a lot different. That's a good point, Austin. I do think those two games are inherently different. They're different enough, I guess. Now, my next question is: do you guys think that repetition deteriorates the quality? I guess.
I don't think it has to. Does it have that effect sometimes? Yes. But I don't think it has to.
Here's my concern. And I appreciate your point, Austin, where what I hear you saying is if we took a break from an IP like Assassin's Creed for a year and went back to it, would it be similar to our experience with games that actually do take a break for a couple years? Right. And it would feel more fresh? My difficulty with that, though, is that these annualized releases, again, using Assassin's Creed as an example, the development teams are clearly in significant communications with one another. So these games have 2, maybe 3 years max development cycle, which is great. They have enough time, but they still are looking at, okay, we're not developing the Assassin's Creed releasing this year. We're doing the one for next year, but we have to look at what they did for this year's one so we can properly include these new features. And I think that is what really hinders innovation, because they're still, even though they're taking a couple years to develop this game, they're still heavily utilizing the things that are in the current year's release. So they never really have an opportunity to step back and really evaluate what they want to include in the game and what they want to remove. I think that what is lost is the amount of time necessary to freely innovate. And I think having another team working on the same series is what is hindering them from saying, okay, what do we want to do with this series?
They can't do whatever they want because, one, they have a whole nother dev working on the next year's game.
Yes,
that's fair.
Well, okay, and not to mention, let's not, and you can't forget to mention that they have really strict deadlines to meet. Like every year, an Assassin's Creed game has to come out every year. And I think personally, I mean, if you look at Assassin's Creed Unity, that one actually, it looks like the development cycle did hurt that game. There was a lot of day one issues with that, big day one issues. It wasn't just like a few bugs. It would actually hurt the game because they have these deadlines.
I didn't run into those, but they were widely documented. How many problems it had.
There's a lot, and and then the other point I want to make with that whole like being on that deadline is the reason they have to include all those features is because they have to make a game that people can count on. Right, they have to include all those features because Joe Schmo or Jack Bauer, whatever, down the street, he played last year, and he loved everything in that. So if they include all those features in this game because he wants to have everything he played last year except for more in this year.
Yeah.
So like it totally constrains innovation because yes, you want to make something innovative, but you also want to have a game that people are going to feel comfortable with being familiar with, because they want it. A lot of people, and I don't think this is necessarily the hardcore gaming audience so much, but it's those people who only buy 2 or 3 games a year, and they only buy Call of Duty, and they only buy Assassin's Creed. They want something that they can rely on, like being the same every year. And I think that truly does hinder the evolution of a franchise, because honestly, I feel like Assassin's Creed should have evolved a lot further than it has in the last 3 years, personally.
Definitely. I think we'd be looking at a really different Assassin's Creed if, even with the same developers working on it, if they had just had 2 years in between each game and said, you can do what you want with this series, and you have the 2-year freedom to do what you want and take it in the direction that you want. I think we'd be looking at a very different series.
I feel like that happened with Black Flag. It doesn't happen every time, but I think Black Flag was that.
But Black Flag, I mean, I'll be honest. I'll ask you guys because I didn't play this game. Just based on videos I watched, it definitely looked like it leaned pretty heavy on Assassin's Creed 3 in a lot of ways.
It was the same engine, but I think aside from that, it was the same engine and the same formula, but the whole open world kind of aspect of it was basically entirely new, where you could essentially sail from city to city rather than just warping magically like you used to. And that might seem really trivial as I talk about it, but it really changed the feel of the game as you were playing it. I felt like I could sail from Havana to wherever just because I want to, and I'm going to shoot up everything on the way with my awesome ship. Like the gameplay kind of experience, I think with Black Flag changed a lot. What I don't understand is they kind of seem like they ditched that in Unity, and I'm assuming that's because it was a different studio. I don't know that this was the case, but it seems like it was probably a different studio developing Unity than Black Flag. Well,
and here's another thing. So say you are a hardcore fan of the franchise. Well, now there's two games that came out this year. You had Unity, and what was the other one called again?
Rogue. But Rogue. I think most people have Rogue was specifically made because they didn't want to create a version of Unity for the last gen consoles. They were like, well, we'll make Rogue just so people who haven't upgraded yet have something to play. And I think most people are just going to disregard that game unless they really, really love Assassin's Creed and can't afford a PS4 or Xbox One yet.
Okay, that's fair enough. So I do want to jump into another quote that actually just came out earlier this month. Shuhei Yoshida hates annualized franchises, and then one of his quotes, and in the quote that came out, he said, "Marketing and salespeople are very profit-driven, which can foster a misunderstanding of situations such as game delays or sequels." Basically saying that creativity is being hindered by deadlines and marketing. Oh, we have to have this game that comes out every year, and we have to create this big marketing campaign. It's like freaking making... Yeah.
Say, please calm down about The Last Guardian, please.
That's exactly saying. It's like, well, if you just wait a little longer, yeah. Gosh. When The Last Guardian finally comes out, it's probably going to be a good game, but I'm sure that the story behind that game is going to be way more interesting than the actual game, FYI.
Probably.
I'm afraid it's going to be Duke Nukem Forever. That's what I'm afraid of.
I don't think it's going to be that bad.
I don't think it's going to be that bad. It may not be great, but I don't think... Duke Nukem Forever was actually really terrible.
Yeah, and that went through multiple different development teams and everything.
Yeah,
Duke Nukem Forever
different
did.
studios.
This one's at least mostly the same team behind it and everything. So I don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, but what do you think? What do you think about these bigwigs? Bigwig Sony. I mean, he's kind of about as big as they get. What do you think about
Well, it's easy for him to say that.
He's the president, though. He should be all about money, right?
Right, but he still makes money from Call of Duty doing annualized franchises because they license out for their console. So he still makes money from those games, despite their own games not doing that. And on top of that, they've been pumping out some of their games at a fairly rapid rate. When they released the original Little Big Planet, they said there will never be another need for another Little Big Planet because it's a totally build your own game kind of thing. And yet they're on the third one already.
Well, okay, yes, that's true. The second one came out 2 years later, and I give them some leeway, though, because that second game actually did really flesh out a lot of the ideas of the first one. And it was a great game. 3, I heard, wasn't quite as good, and it's not even made by Media Molecule, so, whatever. But you're right. It's, again, same issue, though. Different studio making the same, working on the same IP.
I mean, he can say that, and it sounds like he's saying that in replying to a question about a game delay that he doesn't really want to answer a question about. And he's saying he's blaming it on kind of annualized franchises and things like that. But they do the same stuff. Everybody does this on some level. Maybe it's not every single year, but they're rolling out the same game over and over and over again, just like everyone else. And as much as I love Shuhei, I think he's fantastic. I really, really do love him. I think he's a little in this. If you apply this quote to annualized franchises, I think, and if that's really what this is referring to, he's probably being a little disingenuous here.
Well, I mean, he likes to make money, so but I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I just think it's interesting that, and Reggie and Miyamoto, and I feel like Iwata would say the same thing. But that is also the political correct. I mean, that's the safe answer to say, right? Because everyone's always gonna. I mean, it's gonna sound better if you side with the artistic merit versus the money side of things, because then you're just a sellout, right? Well, okay. Well, moving on. Do you think any of these franchises have reached saturation point? I mean, we've been playing Call of Duty, we've been playing essentially Modern Warfare sequels since 2007. So we're at year 8, 2015, and there's still another one scheduled to come out this year. And I'm not saying they're all bad games, but at what point? And I've been spelling doom for that franchise for a very long time, and every year I'm completely, totally wrong because sales are still great. Although I believe Advanced Warfare and Dog Ops, as I like to call it,
they don't
we're down.
They just reboot.
Well, yeah, they
do.
It's true. Or you see what
what they're trying to do with Advanced Warfare. They're trying to make it a reboot. I don't think it's really that, but I think that's what they're hoping it is.
Nah. No, it still it does add some cool stuff, and you can double jump now, which Halo did in 2001, but or Metroid did in 2002, but but I mean, I think what we're going to see, and I could be totally wrong on this, is Call of Duty goes away for a while, eventually, in favor of stuff like Destiny, and the reason I say that is because Activision, I feel like, was trying to invest very heavily. Now, that's not to say that we don't get Call of Duties every year, but I don't know. I feel like it's
a different audience, but yeah, you're right. They're going to do something. It'll come back, though.
Oh, no. I feel like they're trying to invest in new IPs that are going to take over that same, like, oh my gosh, you got to buy this version of that game every year type of thing. And Activision, I think, is playing it smart by actually. And
Destiny's model's a little different, though.
It is.
They're super, super DLC heavy. Expensive DLCs.
Yeah, $20 DLC. Quarter. Yeah, good night. DLC that was in the original game, just like Call of Duty.
I think I think in the long term, though, I think we're going to start to see the sort of fruits of the attitude that has been had with these annualized IPs from a business perspective. So you have, again, using Assassin's Creed and several other games from 2014, we're starting to see that this development cycle is hurting them with things like glitches and things like that, where they're now rushed. It's expected now, because of these annual IPs, it is expected that you get this Assassin's Creed out, you get this Call of Duty out, you get these games out for holiday every single year, or there's a huge problem. It doesn't matter because of the business side of things, it doesn't really matter so much the quality of the content that they're pushing out. It matters to the development team, no doubt. I guarantee the development team is all about wanting to make a great game.
But those aren't the ones selling the game.
Exactly. So the fruits of the fruits of the annualized IP are games that start to break down, and I think we're seeing that with Assassin's Creed. I think Call of Duty may be a slight exception, but even Call of Duty it's not expanding as quickly as it once was by any means.
I don't feel like anyone really talked about Advanced Warfare or what was it? What was the last one? A Ghost? Yeah, Call of Duty Ghost. Like, I mean, I know people were playing it, but no one was really talking about him.
Well, we just talked about at the beginning of this podcast about Skyrim, right? And it had an extremely long development cycle. The difference between Oblivion and Skyrim was 5 years. And that came out more broken than any Assassin's Creed game, any Call of Duty game. Like, there's no guarantee that having a traditional development cycle is going to address any of those problems.
No, you're right, but it's I'll give more grace to that because I feel like what they're doing with Skyrim is so much more ambitious, and there's a lot more room. There's more room for bugs. Now, obviously, not the glitch you're talking about. That was actually a problem. But I'm saying the average glitch you're going to run into in a Skyrim game.
If somebobody's head is missing, I don't care. That's a little annoying, but it's not that.
Well, and it's not like Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed where it's like copy and paste everything, right? Like you have your world is 20 times bigger than any of those games. I mean, and it's expansive and. You have different character models for all these different people. I mean, yeah, I think it's totally different. Well, I guess not totally different, but
a traditional development cycle doesn't guarantee that those things are ever addressed. If you give a development team more time, they're going to take it doing whatever they feel like, and that's fine. But it doesn't mean that they're actually going to fix the bugs because they're going to continue to squeeze in more and more features as much as they can because no one wants to squash bugs. It sucks to do that. It's not fun. They're going to be like, oh, but we can add this, and we can add this. And that's cool, and that makes for a much more fleshed out game. Skyrim is the perfect example. Huge, massive game with tons of things to do. But when it rolled out, still broken like everything else.
Well, and then the big exception here is Nintendo, who does take a long time, and then the games come out, their games work like flawlessly.
Generally flawless execution.
Yeah,
it's true.
It's crazy.
And that comes down to processes within those development studios.
Right.
Dude, do we have the proper QA process in place? And clearly Ubisoft did not with this last game. I mean, that is, we have to have the teams in place to test it. We have to have all those processes, right?
But if your game's not, but that's like one of the last steps of the development. If your game's not ready for that point in time, you have a deadline. You have a deadline, and what if your game's not ready by the deadline? But it's a machine, so you can't not release a game, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's where time, I think time is a factor. But to your point, yes, it's not necessarily the be-all, end-all.
Time is a factor, but definitely doesn't guarantee anything.
No. Okay, fair enough. Now, the last question I want to ask is, do you think certain franchises would benefit more from tighter deadlines? I mean, every time, I guarantee you. And I don't want to say Zelda's going to get delayed this year, but gosh dang it, every Zelda game always gets delayed. Every freaking time. So
I don't think it's going to be delayed this year.
I don't think. I hope not because I don't feel like Nintendo's got anything else coming. Like we're not expecting anything else to come this year, right? So
I think they do. I think Nintendo's going to unveil something at E3. I think it's going to be Animal Crossing or something. But they still rely way too much on Zelda this year for the Wii, for their entire console. There's no way I think it's going to be delayed.
Well, it's like Smash Bros. Just last year. Like that, all their eggs were in that basket.
Exactly.
And if they don't have that game, they just lost the holiday sales. So yeah. No, I'm totally with you on that. But I mean, generally speaking, though, Skyward Sword got delayed like a year. I mean, Twilight Princess delayed a year, and it's acceptable. And in my mind, it's acceptable because you get more quality, right? And I'm cool with that. But at the same time, you can't count on them every 3 or 4 years, right?
I think if you really love games, you're probably gonna tell the dev, and you trust the developer. You're gonna tell them, take as much time as you need. I would rather have a quality game than you rush it out. And we'll see how that works out with games like The Witcher, who's been delayed multiple times, and sometimes it ends up being really great. But things like Zelda, I think they could do. Nintendo games in general could do with tighter deadlines. Like they are given plenty of time to develop games, and they could move them along much faster. I do believe.
Well, Zelda games are awful. I mean, it's like they have like. Well, I mean, to the Zelda team's defense, they actually they have the same team that works on the 3DS games. Well, on like. Okay, not every 3DS game. Like they did the same team that did A Link Between Worlds also did Skyward Sword and is going to do the new one. The remakes are totally separate entity, but I mean, so they're working on, they're putting out one game on a handheld, one game on a console. So, but I mean, like, what? It's been 4 years, but it'll be 4 years between the last Zelda and the Zelda on a console. And before that, it was 5 years between. It was 2006 and 2011 between Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. That's a long effing time. That's a long time for a game frame. I mean, then Skyrim, 5 years. I mean, Fallout 3 came out in 2008. So we're at year 7 this year if they don't make it out this year. I mean, They have time, and I get it. Like, these studios are making other games too, but good grief. I mean, I'm with you. Half-Life, Valve has to be the worst, actually. Nintendo, Valve have, because they don't have. I don't feel like they ever have deadlines for anything. Like, they just make games because it's cool, and that's great. But there's like no pressure. They will they'll work on this game. And they'll put it out whenever they want to. They don't really care, and they're going to sell like truckloads.
They will never release Half-Life 3. It won't happen.
Well, it's not even just Half-Life 3. It was Portal 2. They delayed it, and then I mean, they Left 4 Dead. They did 2 years in a row, which was fine. Left 4 Dead 2 was a great improvement.
Valve doesn't need to because of the Steam platform.
Well, exactly. It's true. They don't have to worry about deadlines because they know whenever they release it, it's going to make a crap load of money, and they're already making so much money off of Steam. They don't, it's not like if they miss a deadline on a game.
That's a like a culture within a developer that's been widely documented as extremely lax and kind of doing whatever you feel like, whenever you feel like it. It's not conducive to production. It's not conducive to pushing out games. It's not conducive, frankly, to pleasing your fans.
No, not at all, as we can tell.
Valve makes amazing things, they really do, but I am highly critical of them from a perspective of, like, I don't feel like they respect their fans that much at times, because they're just like, oh, we'll do whatever the hell we want, Well,
the fact that we haven't gotten an update on Half-Life 3 after they left us on a cliffhanger, you don't do that. You don't.
They have Steam Dota. It doesn't matter anymore. They're fine. They're rolling in money.
If you can't give us a game, which they better damn well give us a game one day. But if they can't give us a game, give me a comic book. Give me a book. I don't care. You do not end your story on a cliffhanger. Go away for like 8 years and be like, well, it's, we might get to it. Okay. Anyway, that's a different tangent. So I think, despite being very critical of annualized franchises, at least they have a get it done attitude that I do wish other studios would kind of buckle down on. But, neither here nor there. All right, well,
I need to point out that Nintendo's different because they have to continue to sell consoles, and if they don't produce their own games, then it's not going to happen.
Oh, no, exactly. They have to put their games out. Their entire business is built off of their games. Like, there's no one's helping them out really on that front. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining that conversation. So, annualized franchises, listeners, what do you think? Do they drive you nuts? Do you like them? Do you play Call of Duty every year? Do you play Assassin's Creed every year? If so, what do you like about those franchises, and why do you continue to purchase them? And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I'm really serious. Like, what keeps bringing you back to those franchises every year? Go ahead and hit us up. Leave us a comment here on this podcast page, or you can always tweet me at BigCalKenobi91 on the Twitterverse. What are your thoughts on what we got going on here with the Groundhog Day effect here? Austin, where can people find more of your work online till next episode?
Well, I have no work online because I'm a bum. But if you want to play games with me, you can add me on PSN. Just my last name, Lucari, Lucari. I'm kind of moved away from Destiny, so if that wasn't your thing, then we can play something else. It'll be fun.
All right. Yeah. Well, fun times. And again, I want to not to be confused with the Pokemon. He is not a psychic fighting type or whatever it is. Tyler, where can people find you online?
I don't play a lot of multiplayer games, so you probably won't get me to play games with you, but you're welcome to check out what games I'm playing. If you go on PSN profiles and look up Back to Narnia, you can at least see what I'm playing in the PlayStation universe and see what I'm enjoying.
Oh boy, and not to be, and we have an antisocial bunch here because I'm not doing a lot of online gaming these days either. Multiplayer games. You can always find me again on the Twitter, or you can look up my work on calebmasters.net, where you can find a bunch of. I also do movie reviews, and I am gearing up for a Game of Thrones, the next season of our Game of Thrones podcast, also co-hosted by the very curmudgeon Austin Lucari. Where we talk about the hit show Game of Thrones. So we're gearing up for that. The show comes back in April. And of course, you can look me up also online on the PSN website for Big Cal Kenobi, not to be confused with Old Ben Kenobi. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. And till next time.
Hey, Austin.
Yes?
I don't know if you heard the news. The new Zelda for the Wii U, you're not going to be too happy. There's like a big timer in the top corner. It's really similar to Majora's Mask in that.
Wait,
that
what?
way.
I didn't know about that.
But
There's.
it's like a
I'm just
time of
kidding.
day thing, right? Like,
I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with you.
Oh, okay. Brad, you're really screwing with us. Oh man.
I would smash my Wii U.
Oh. Oh, well, now that you say that, it's going to happen, Austin. It's going to get pushed back a year, and that's going to happen.